Welcome to another episode of How to Adult with Travis Walker. Make sure that you're following the podcast so that you never miss another episode. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at How to Adult TW. Today's episode is all about saving money. We go into a few other financial things as well, but I brought on my fellow financial nerd, my friend from college, Seth McNeill. We are going to learn how to adult together. So let's go and get into the show. Seth, how are you doing?
Travis, I'm doing really good, man. It is so good to see you.
It's so good to see you, man. It's been too long. We need to get together soon.
Exactly.
So what have you been up to?
Man, I have been working away. I work at a credit union up here in North Austin, and I'm actually making a transition here in the next week to actually be a mortgage funder post-closer. So, reviewing documents, making sure people are ready, and making sure, they actually can buy their houses.
Yeah, that's an important step in the home buying process.
I like to think so.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, we actually bought our house from, or the credit union that you work for is the who supported us, and so
yeah.
I think y'all are amazing. Shout out to Amplify Credit Union.
Yes, sir.
But you kind of already answered my first question, but just to make sure that we understand and we're really intentional about it, how old are you, and what part of the world do you live in?
Yeah, man, I am a 23-year-old, very young, recent college graduate, been a year out, and I live actually here in the North Austin area. I actually live in Cedar Park, so.
I didn't realize how close we were. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I moved up here probably 2 months ago from over near like the Domain area.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna have to connect sometime. But just to build some credibility, this episode is all gonna be about saving money. All right. And so I think that we're going to get on a few tangents because money is so important. But just before we even get into money, I'd like to just build some credibility for you and talk a little bit more about your experience in finance and why I brought you onto the show for the money episode.
Yeah. So, I mean, other than my good looks, there are a few other reasons I think you brought me on. No, but... I studied finance at Texas State. That's actually where Travis and I met.
Yes.
I served as the treasurer of my fraternity, so got a little organization, financial background. And then I also was a financial representative at Northwestern Mutual for about 9 months. And in that time, got to learn a lot about personal finance, building really a strong foundation for saving money. I think that's probably the most important place to start is saving money. And so hopefully, I've learned enough to be able to come in here and teach at least one person one thing.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. And so what about your current role? Your current role is kind of on the back end of home buying. Can you talk a little bit about that real quick?
Yeah, so, still transitioning to that. So figuring out everything with that, I can say, where I'm coming from was being a banker. So learning more about, what kind of, bank accounts there are out there, what kind of options you have for, getting everything set up to have financial independence. I know that's a goal for everybody, in their 20s is how can I, be financially independent and be an adult who, is a wonderful homeowner with a beautiful picture of dogs in the background, like Travis here.
Yes.
But... I learned a lot about, helping guide people to their banking needs in my last role. And I'm hoping in this role to understand more about the home buying process because that, I can't speak from experience, but I'm sure Travis can be a very tedious experience.
Oh my gosh, it's so tedious. And it in a lot of ways it needs to be tedious. In a lot of ways it's just checking boxes. But that's really awesome. I appreciate you sharing your experience and building some credibility with the audience. I think that's super duper important. And so you threw out this word called financial independence, which is if you don't know, a whole movement of people. There's the FIRE movement, the financially independent and retire early. I more so focus on the financial independence portion because I enjoy what I do for the most part. But the foundation of financial independence all comes from saving money. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I would 100% agree. That's the foundation for really any financial goal you have, whether that's independence, a vacation, retirement, whatever it might be.
Yeah. So why is financial independence something that I should be striving for? As a young adult, I should be out partying. I should be out spending all the money that I have, right? And so why should financial independence be on my radar at all in my 20s?
Yeah, man. I think the main reason that it should be on your mind is because the earlier you start, the better. I don't know if this quote is real, but people always say Albert Einstein said this: the eighth wonder of the world is compound interest. And what that means is, the earlier you start saving, the more interest that money is going to earn, and the interest that your interest earns is going to keep growing. I actually have a little thing pulled up because I remembered learning it. But if you started at 20, saving money to have $1 million by 65, most people retire at 65.
Right.
You would need to save $2 a day or $61 a month. If you waited till you were 30, that moves to about $635 a day or $193 a month. 40, $625 a month. 50, you got to save a little over $2,000 a month. And so, in that 30-year window, you went from $61 a month to nearly $2,500.
Yeah.
So, I think, yes, you should have fun. You should never be like, oh, I can't have fun because the podcast guy told me not to. But the earlier you start, the better you're setting yourself up, whether that's, retiring with more money or even retiring early like you talked about. There is a movement for that. And really It's just having a little bit of discipline. And, I'm hoping we'll go in today, how can you have that discipline? How can you, save money but not sacrifice, enjoying your 20s?
Right. It's a really big deal. And you just confirmed everything for me because I'm big on saving money for retirement and also just saving money for other reasons as well. And hearing that $61 number, I'm like, whoa, because I'm doing much more than that, and that makes me feel good. That's really cool. That's really cool, and I think it's super duper important to acknowledge the discipline. So while we're even talking about discipline, because you mentioned it, why is this so important, and how do I become disciplined in the area of saving money?
Yeah, so for me, I will not lie to you, I have grown up a lot in the last probably 2 years with saving money and everything. And one thing that I came to realize helped me out in being disciplined is I bank at two different banks.
Okay.
I have my main bank is where I send most of my direct deposit. I make sure all my bills go there, and I don't carry a debit card for that bank.
Wow.
So, let's just say, my bills are $1,000. So, I make a little bit more than that a month,
Sure.
I'm just going to make numbers up. I make $2,000 a month. So I immediately am I'm putting $1,000 in that bank account because I know all my bills are going to auto come out of that and I'll be good.
Yeah.
And so I'll either put 1,000 or a little bit more depending on if I'm also saving for something. Most people are. So, put
Right.
$1,200 in there. That means the other $800 goes into my other bank account that I do have my debit card for. And that money, I can go do whatever I want with because at the end of the day, I'm not stressed about paying my bills or saving for something because I took care of that on the front end. I think the easiest thing to think about is, treating your savings like a bill. It's a whole nother bill that you need to focus on because really, you got to pay yourself first.
Yeah, so I think that's really a big deal. A lot of people will say, you mentioned treating your savings like a bill. A lot of people also put it in the perspective of you got to pay yourself first. And a lot of people will say, oh, that they'll name their future selves. They're like, oh, let's see, what's a good name? What's a good strong name? Albert. Albert was on the podcast. My future self is Albert. I got to make sure Albert is taken care of, because if I don't take care of Albert, nobody's going to take care of Albert. And so a lot of people frame it in that. Do you think that that's a smart move, or do you think it's more so treating it like a bill is a little bit more successful?
I think it genuinely depends on who you are as a person. One thing that I learned is there are different ways to go about anything, whether it's saving or paying off debt. Some people are more emotional thinkers. They need that emotional connection. And so, thinking about your future self can have that emotional connection, and naming, your future self. I think that can help a lot. While some people are just very analytical, like if they see the numbers, like, oh, if I save, $61 a month starting when I'm 20, I know I'll at least have $1 million whenever I retire. And so I think there are multiple strategies for how to look at it. But I think the main thing to take away from it is, saving should come first and not last. Some people, they live their life, they go, get paid, pay their bills, go have fun, and then save whatever's left over, right. Which, it can work, but there's some inconsistency there because you're not saving the same amount every month. And so, you might save $20 one month, you might save $300 the next month. It's hard to really plan for, your savings goal if there's a wide variety of how much you're going to save each month.
Right. And it could be dangerous to do it that way, right? Because you could be, if you're not saving and you're just saving what's left over, you can be in the red pretty quickly. If you go over 1 month and then you don't save any money, and then you go even further into the red the next month, then you're setting yourself up for consumer debt, which can be dangerous as well. We're going to have an episode on debt at some point. But I want to go back to how you're setting up your finances, because you mentioned 2 different bank accounts, and I've heard, I listened to the Bigger Pockets Money podcast, which is one of the biggest personal finance podcasts out there. And there was a guy that they have on, and they said that they have 31 bank accounts for their different bills, which seems a little complex to me, but hey, that's fine. My point on this is that it's important to be creative and find what works for you in terms of managing your money and also saving your money. And so do you feel like you have a creative approach to saving money, or do you think that most people should be kind of looking at your model and scratching their head and saying, yeah, I should do something like this?
I don't think, I'm never going to be the kind of person to say, yeah, my way or the highway. Because, like we just talked about, everybody's different. I, in the banking world, have deposited money for people, and some people have their accounts set up where it's all at one bank, but they have different accounts and they name them. So like, I can think of one member, he's really good at saving, but he has one account just called vacation. And he is very consistent on, he puts X amount of money every Friday into that account. Right. I don't know if it's a specific vacation or if he just has a vacation fund, but he has that. I bought a PC about 4 months ago, and so for me, I made a savings account and just called it computer savings. And I knew every month I'm going to put this much in there, and was able to buy my PC, and it wasn't a big hit on, my finance or anything, because I didn't dimp out of, my normal savings. I had created a plan for how to do that. Right. And so, like, that's my way. Some people need 32 bank accounts for all their bills.
Right.
It just depends on how, I'm trying to think of the word, but how organized you want to be with it. Because, like, at Northwestern Mutual, I had a guy who, he automated everything where his direct deposit was going in 12 different places to handle different things. And, if you want to put that time and effort into that, you're probably going to be successful with your savings. But that doesn't mean that you and me, Travis, 'cause I don't think you're doing that. I mean, I don't want to assume, but that you and I, using 1 or 2 bank accounts it's not going to, mean we're failing. We might still be very successful in what we're doing. It's just that discipline we talked about.
Yeah, I think that's really big. And a lot of people use these different accounts, especially savings accounts, so that for what you're describing of what I know is called a sinking fund, saving for very specific things and to make sure that you're set and ready to go. I haven't gotten that organized yet. And there's a few different reasons why. I have 2 savings accounts and 1 checking account at one bank right now. And a lot of the reason is that, you know, Amber and I are still in the process of combining our finances as a married couple. We're still in that process. And so right now it's just because of simplicity. But another thing is that I know that I'm very disciplined. No matter how big that number gets in that savings account, I know that I'm not going to make a hasty decision on something, right? If anything, it's a game for me. I want that number to get bigger, and I want it to get bigger as fast as possible. And so I think that's how I view it. But all of that comes from a place of discipline. I know that, you know, if I see $25,000 in the bank, that makes me feel good, but I know I'm not going to go buy a $25,000 something, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that you starting off with this premise of it all comes to discipline is super important. And one way that people utilize discipline in their finances is to create a budget. Do you utilize a budget? Do you think that we should be advising people to utilize budgets? How should we factor budgeting into this conversation about saving money?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that I've learned is, you know, trying to live on a budget, like consistently living on a budget can make you go a little crazy.
Right.
But I think even just taking a step back, whether it's once a year, twice a year, just a few times a year, and breaking down like, okay, this is where my money's actually going, you know, like, oh, I didn't realize I was spending this much money on eating out. Like, now that I look at my finances, like, wow, I should definitely, you know, make more food at home. So I think a budget can be useful, but I think you don't want to fall into the trap of being so like, I have to live on my budget, you know, because you can drive yourself crazy doing that.
Right. I think there's also a negative connotation around budget because a budget makes it sound limiting. And I don't think it has to be that way, right? I don't think you have to look at a budget and say, oh, I'm limiting myself. I said, no, I think you're more living in basic guidelines toward, you know, what you're doing. Like, you have social guidelines, like, oh, I want to see my friends at least once or twice a month. I want to be intentional about it. I would see the budget the same way, where that's just a guideline, and, okay, I want to spend my money this way, and I want to make sure that I'm holding myself accountable in that way. Do you see a budget that way, or do you think it's a little bit different?
No, I view it as almost an enabler, because it enables you to see, you know, where you are. You can look at it more like a snapshot of, you know, the last 4 months. This is kind of where I've been. You know, I have been a lot better about saving the last 4 months, and, you know, I can continue that. It lets you take a step back and be like, you know, I'm paying for, you know, Netflix, Hulu, Apple, whatever you're paying for. You can be like, you know, like, at the end of the day, I'm paying like $50 for streaming services. Like, am I really using them all?
Right.
Or could I be, you know, spending that money on something else, or saving for, you know, a nice Disney World vacation or something?
Yeah. We all want to go to Disney World,
dude.
Obviously,
that's the goal. You know, can't wait for this podcast to do an on location episode there.
Yes. That's coming next summer.
Okay, perfect.
Don't hold me to that. So, just kind of transitioning the conversation back to specifically saving money, right? There's a bunch of different philosophies about saving money specifically. You know, some people think saving is super duper important, right? The financial independence movement thinks it's super duper important. The retire early movement thinks it's super duper important. But there are some people out there that say, I work really hard, and, you know, I make this money, and I make this money for a specific purpose, and that purpose is to spend the money. That's the only reason that I work. And so where do you fall on this spectrum of saving money is super duper important, and I'm going to make sure that I do that only, and this other side of the spectrum, which is I make money to spend it, and I'm going to spend it? Where do you fall on this spectrum?
I would say, you know, I fall more towards the saving is important spectrum, but I think that as long as you're strategic with, you know, how you're saving your money, you know, using your retirement option, you know, your 401k, your TSP, whatever it might be, as long as you're consistent with that, you don't have to save as much as you think. Like, there will still be money left over to have fun, as long as, you know, you're not drowning yourself in debt, going and buying, you know, a car or a house that's way out of your budget. But, like, you know, I think there's that perfect balance of, working hard and playing hard with your money, because, the 401ks, TSPs, like they are amazing things that can really help you out. Especially if your company is something that offers like a match. I always tell my friends, my coworker, I'm like, dude, like, it doesn't matter how much you put into that for, as long as you're hitting the match point, like, to get the most money, because that's free money. No person in this world, no matter how good they are at their job, is going to be able to get you free money.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Exactly. I hear a lot about, I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's why I have a podcast. And they always talk about matches. And I'm a teacher, so that's not an option for me. We don't want to give teachers free money. But
who do you think you are?
A lot of businesses out there, have a match program, and that's super duper cool. And so if you have a match program, you need to be taking advantage of it, because like Seth said, that is free money that you want to take advantage of.
We so during COVID, they had kind of scaled back our match program, just so that way they could get us better benefits, with COVID and everything going on. But they recently announced they were bumping it back up to, about double what it was. And so that, for me, that was probably the best news I've gotten my, my 7 months in my role. Cause I was like, man, that's a lot of free money right there.
Yeah.
That you just get. And I mean, we talked about that $61 a month, that match alone can get you just about there.
Right. And that's super huge. And so we're a bunch of financial nerds here. So we need to water it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about 401ks and TSPs and matches, and I'm a big fan of the Roth IRA. There's the traditional IRA. There's a bunch of different, letters and things that we're talking about here. Yeah. And so I want to talk about for a moment is that we're talking about saving money, and there's a bunch of these avenues that we're talking about. Where should people put their money? Because if they put it in a traditional savings account, they're getting like 2 cents a year. And so some people will say, oh, I want to put my savings account somewhere to make sure that it's getting a better return. What is your advice? Because I know there can be some danger in this kind of conversation.
Yeah, no, I think it's really dangerous. And I'm going to tread lightly. I'm not a certified financial advisor in any way, shape, or form. Yes, believe it or not, we are not. And so, this is just my experience, what I think I should do with my money. And if people take that and do it, more power to you. If you have a better way, please, do your better way. But I think you need to be careful with what you do in a way that, there are places to go get better returns.
Right.
But what you sacrifice with those better returns is what they call in finance liquidity, or the ability to get that money easily. So, a savings account is good in a way that money is yours. You don't have to jump through really any hoops. You got to go and transfer the money to a checking account or something. But you really don't have to jump through hoops to get that money. Right. And so you're sacrificing a higher interest rate, so that way, if something happens, car breaks down, you have that money ready for you.
Yeah.
But, we talked about the IRA, the 401k, the retirement tools. You're not allowed to touch those until you're 59 and a half, 99.9% of the time. That's another conversation to have with a financial advisor if you really want to know the intricacies of that. But you're sacrificing the ability to touch that money, but you're not getting taxed on it. You get to keep that money for yourself, and it grows so much quicker than something in a savings account will. Yeah. And so my advice for people is, depending on your job, you want to have about 3 to 6 months of what it costs to live. That way if something happens, you're prepared just in a savings account. If it costs you $1,000 to live, you want to have between $3,000 and $6,000 in your bank account, in your savings account. And then the rest from there should have a purpose. And depending on how far along that purpose is, like if in the next 2 years you want to do something, that should be in your normal savings account, because everything else is risky. And in a 2-year window, you don't know what it's going to look like. Yeah. COVID came out of nowhere, and the market went down. The stock market went down, which is where most of your longer term things are going to be. So While like your saving account would be fine. Like, yeah, the interest rate has gone down, but so has interest rates of, getting a house and getting a car. I'm sure that played, a role in you getting your house, Travis, was
Absolutely.
interest rates were really low and the sacrifices savings accounts are really low.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Just to pause, because you're,
yeah.
you're saying a lot of good things here, and so I think it's important to recognize we are financial nerds. We are not financial advisors. There's a difference, and so I'm glad that you touched on that because it's really super duper important. And another thing is that you mentioned things like the emergency fund, which is super really important. For us, we have a 3-month emergency fund. I like to say that depending on how risky your job is, that's what determines how long you need, right? Both of us are teachers. We're pretty safe in where we're at, right? And so we have a 3-month emergency fund. While if you're self-employed, you probably need closer to a 12-month emergency fund because, being self-employed is more risky. And so, and then you just have to have a risk assessment of your job and then decide how much time you really need to do that. And so I'm glad that you brought up the emergency fund. So do you usually recommend a 3 to 6 month or is that changed like what I said?
I normally say 3 to 6 months, but when it comes down to it, there's that comfort level to it too. Are you comfortable in a self-employed or all commission job with 6 months? Or do you feel better with that 12-month? We talked about some people are very analytical with it. Some people are more emotions driven. If emotionally you're going to feel better, having that 12 months in your bank account, do that. It is okay to do that. It is okay to do the 6 months, but just having at least some sort of cushion in case something happens, because you never know what's around the corner. A lot of people were unemployed for a while because of COVID, and you can't predict that. And so just being prepared for things like that can help you a lot.
Yeah. So jumping back to the retirement account conversation, because there's so many good ones and there's so many different ways that you can utilize them and all of these things. Do you have a favorite, like a favorite account that you use, or is it kind of just whatever for you?
Yeah, so it depends. You mentioned you are a teacher, so you have TSP, which is fantastic in the fact that something like a TSP is going to be almost like an annuity, which I know can be like, what is that? But an annuity or TSP basically will make sure Travis, once he retires, will always get a paycheck until he is no longer making podcasts or no longer around as a whole. He will always get a paycheck. And so those are incredible things that have since gone away. And a couple of reasons that they have gone away is, businesses have realized people live longer, so they're paying out more. But also, annuities and things are notorious for not keeping up with, inflation, which is the lowering value of a dollar. So, like gas, 20 years ago cost $1.50. That same amount of gas costs more now because there's just more dollars in the world. And if there's more dollars,
It's worth less.
Yes, exactly. If you have 100 cookies and you eat one, that's cool. If you have 5 cookies and you eat one, you're going to notice it a lot more.
Right.
And so I think that's a good way to look at that. As far as, what accounts I use, my company has a Roth 401k option. And what a Roth is you pay your taxes up front. You pay your normal taxes, and then it goes into your retirement account. The reason that's why I prefer it is, I feel like I'm going to make more money in the long run than I do now. And so I'll probably get taxed more whenever I'm at retirement age. And so the reason the Roth is great is I'm paying my taxes now. So when I retire and get my money out, I don't have to pay taxes then. That money's just mine. I just pull it whenever. I don't worry about taxes. A traditional IRA or 401k you won't have to pay taxes now. Some people even use it as a tax break.
Mm-hmm.
So that way they pay less taxes or get a higher tax return now. But they will pay taxes on however much they pull out, at retirement. One thing to note is if you have a company that offers a Roth option and you take that, whatever they're matching you is actually going to be traditional. So I'm in a good spot where I have a good mix of my Roth contributions and my company's giving me traditional. So if we ever have, a low tax bracket like we did in, say, 2016 when every tax bracket went down one,
Yeah.
so everyone was paying less taxes, I have money that I can pull on, and I'm okay with paying taxes because I'll pay less taxes on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what you're talking about is a bunch of different options, which is pre-tax and post-tax. It really
Yes.
just depends on when do you want to pay your taxes. Some people look at it at the sense of, do I think how much I'm going to be taxed is going to be more now, or do I think it's going to be more later? And then they make a decision off of that. And so everybody's going to have their own opinion because everybody has their own politics and all of that. And so I personally use a Roth because, that just makes sense for me. But some people think the traditional route is more of a better idea. And I think that's fine. And that's fine and dandy. Because another very common quote on the Bigger Pockets Money podcast is personal finance is personal, right? You can do some pretty wild things and it would still make sense for you, but the person next to you, it may not make any sense at all for, right? And so do you fall into that category? Or do you think there's another way that we should look at that?
No, I think, every person's different. My thing, like my thought process with it is, like I said earlier, I think I'm in the lowest tax bracket I'm going to be for the rest of my life. So my thought process is I want to pay my tax now because I know for a fact I'm going to, make more money at 65 than I do at 23.
I think that makes sense. I think that makes total sense.
Well,
right?
Some people who go to med school because they are, much smarter than me, they're probably going to take, I don't want to say a pay cut because, they're still going to, have a great retirement, but they might want to, not pay taxes now because they're going to move down a tax bracket in retirement. I think that's a good way to do it. Some people, they kind of just want to see, where taxes are going to be. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, like you said, everybody's personal finances are personal.
Yeah, I think that's really good. So transitioning a little bit back to our savings conversation, we are already getting into our nerdy finance conversation, which I love.
Of
and
course.
those people out there that are interested in finance are going to love this episode. But there's a bunch of different philosophies on the amount of savings that you should have each month. Some people say 10%. Some people say 20, some people say 30, some people even say 50. And so I'm interested where you fall in this argument because I have my own opinion as well. And so we'll see what you have to say on that. How much should people be saving of their monthly paycheck?
Yeah, so the benchmark I was taught was to aim for 20%. One thing that I noticed a lot when I was, doing the financial representative thing was, people our age may not be there just yet.
Right.
But that's okay. You're setting down the foundation to do that. But I was always taught 20% is the number to strive for. If you're doing more, you are going to be, very well equipped whenever you're retiring, Travis. I'm sure, knowing you and how you handle your finances, I'm sure your number is higher than that.
Sure.
But, even if you can't do the 20%, just setting yourself up for, as you move up in your career, you're able to hit that number.
Right.
You're going to be in a good spot. But 20% was what I learned, and that's kind of my reference. But, like you said, some people are 10%, 30%, I think it depends on the person. It's a personal finance thing.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I, of course, have an opinion. But if you're out there and you have a different opinion, I'm not judging you. But I have an opinion. For me, in my household, 20% is our bare minimum, right? If we're strapped for cash, like let's say December, for example, like Christmas, my bare minimum is still 20%. I don't care what's going on. 20% is my bare minimum, right? But if it's not, let's say December, I'd like to get up to 30%. right? And as we pay down more and more of our debt, I hope that we can get to a point where we're saving closer to 45%. That's kind of my goal. Got to pay off some debt before we can get there. And so there's steps to this process. Just because you're saving 15% now doesn't mean in 2-3 years you're going to be saving 15% then. This is an ongoing conversation that you have to have with yourself. If you pay off a debt, you should say, okay, where do I want to deploy the money that I was putting here? Right? You need to redeploy that money to something that you value, right? I value saving money, so I'm going to put that money towards some type of savings account, right? And so I think that's really important in the field of saving money. So I'm not surprised that you said 20%, and I think people should be striving for 20% because that's super duper important. What else on this subject on percentages?
I mean, I think the main takeaway is like we've said this 100 times. I'm sure people are gonna hate the word by the end, but just the discipline of it, like you said, you may be at 15%, you may be at 10, you may be at 5%, but that's okay as long as you are disciplined with what you're doing, and as you move up, you're gonna and make more money. You're like, hey, I know I need to still save this much money into my retirement, this much money into, my short-term savings and whatever that might be. But just being disciplined with it and you'll hit your goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave Ramsey, who's one of the biggest names in personal finance, says that a huge percentage of Americans can't afford a $1,000, emergency or surprise charge, right? It's like you go into the hospital or something. And so a lot of what Dave Ramsey says is that you need to get a $1,000 emergency fund, as quickly as possible, and then you need to pay down debt as soon as possible. I'm more of the sense of I want to strive after that emergency fund. That's 3 months of my expenses rather than having $1,000 and then tapping out and then saying, okay, I'm gonna go spend my money now. But where do you fall in the Dave Ramsey / Walker debate? He doesn't even know who I am, but that's
yeah. Well, I'm ready for the UFC fight. I'll tell you that. But no, I have a lot of respect for Dave Ramsey. He knows what he's talking about. There are some things I disagree on, and that is actually one of them too. Because my thought process has always been, what happens if you get bills that are more than $1,000? Are you just going to get into more debt?
Right.
And I think there is strategy to doing that. And I know you'll talk about this more whenever you do your debt conversation. I don't want to step on toes, but just knowing, what debt to pay off more aggressively and what not to pay off aggressively. I will leave it there because I'm not going to step on your debt friends' toes because, I'm sure there's plenty to talk about there that I'm probably going to learn just from listening.
Yeah, I mean, let's step on some toes. I think that's completely fine. I think that I have very strong opinions about debt. I'm sure you do as well. And Dave Ramsey has a lot of strategies and ways that he attacks debt. But what is your just foundational philosophy on debt? Maybe that's just where we can, just scratch the surface and not get too far into the debt episode.
Of course. Yeah, no, I'm a very numbers person when it comes to it. I strongly believe that anything over 5%, I call, I don't want to make it sound bad, but I call it bad debt.
Okay.
In the fact that I should be more aggressive with that because, having that taken off is good, but also anything below that, if I went and put that money into my 401k or something, it's going to do better than 5%. And so the math is saying I'm better off putting that money to grow at higher than 5% than taking care of a 5% debt.
Yeah, that's a really financial independence argument to take. Because Dave would say, pay off the debt. All debt is bad debt. But I'm more of the opinion. Well, my brokerage account right now is doing pretty well. It's doing, it's making 5+%. So why am I going to pay this debt off aggressively when my money is better deployed in this way that I'm saving, right? And so I think that you're onto something there. Keep going.
Yeah, no, and I have learned the last year and a half that there are some people who just hate the idea of debt, and that's okay. I was never the person to say no, don't worry about it. You'll be fine if you make the minimum payment. Like if you're the kind of person who debt is not your friend, like it's okay to pay it off. Now, I'll argue, hey, the math says otherwise, but if you want to be more aggressive with your debt, as long as you have your money saved, you're prepared for something, like go for it, pay off that debt.
Yeah.
I don't think it's you have to do it Travis's way or my way or Dave Ramsey's way.
Right.
You can do it however you want. There's just some basic things to do. Making sure you save your money and you're working towards that financial independence.
Yeah, and just sharing a personal story to bridge this conversation between debt and saving money. And I've been of the opinion of saving money, and what I've shared here for a very long time. All right, this isn't a new thing for me. I've been saving money for a very long time. And Amber and I are both recent graduates, and so Amber has some student loans that we have, and right now we're in discussion of, well, we've saved all this money. We've been able to save enough money where we have a choice, and I want to come back to this word choice in a moment, but we could pay off her entire student loan right now and free up a good amount of money for us each month. And so that's a really big deal. If you're looking at the numbers, it doesn't really make sense to do that. But if you also think into the perspective of, I'm freeing up money each month, and I'm also less mental capital. My mental space is more free because now I have less debt to worry about. And so, just another instance of, if you save your money, you have a choice to make these high level decisions. And that's what this whole episode about, and that I hope people will take away from this, is that when you save money, you have a choice and you have freedom. Because money is just that. Money is you giving you a choice and giving you freedom. And then when you have this money stacked away in a savings account, you get to make those high level decisions of, okay, my money, yes, can make more money it can make more money in an account, but also this is taking some mental space, and then you get to weigh that decision.
Yeah.
Is that a good way I mean, this is a personal story, but do you think that's a good way of approaching kind of debt and then also saving money?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what we just said, where if it's taking up a lot of your mental space, like take care of yourself, take care of that debt. For me, and like I will tell you my personal story. I have a bunch of government loans from school that I'm really not too worried about. I make the minimum payments and I'm okay with that. I do have one private loan that I'm more aggressive on because the interest rate is not what I want it to be. Now, you can always talk about refinancing, which is a whole nother conversation that, frankly, I'm not very familiar with. I have friends who ask me refinancing questions. I'm like, man, that is one thing I didn't learn very much about. But
That's a different world.
yes, that's a whole nother world. But that's one that I don't want to say I stay up at night, but like that one takes up some mental capacity, and so I'm more aggressive with getting that one paid.
All right. Very good. This has been so informative. I've learned a lot from you, and I think that this is really good. I have one more question before we get into the closing questions of the show.
Of course.
But let's ruffle some feathers. All right? We're going to ruffle some feathers here. What are the all-time worst ways to spend your money? All-time worst.
Oh, man. Man, you came at me with a tough one. Man, I mean, this is a me thing, but like I would say a Bugatti is not a great investment. A lot of people will tell you their worst investment was a car that they bought, because cars depreciate ridiculously quick.
Yeah.
Unless you have a truck right now, because there's a shortage on trucks, so you can probably sell those back for a lot of money. But for most people, a vehicle is their worst investment, mainly because when you drive them off the lot, they lose so much value. They're literally made to wear and tear, because you're literally driving them for thousands and thousands of miles. I bought a car in February, and I'm pretty sure it's probably worth a two-thirds of what it was whenever I bought it. Not that I have not taken care of it. It is working amazing, but just, a brand new car now has just lost a lot of value. And so, that could be one of the worst is, overpaying for a vehicle. I mean, I get it, having nice things is great. A lot of people strive for it, but at the end of the day, is it really worth paying the extra amount of money to look cooler than if you have, a practical car that, may still turn some heads, driving a new car still turns some heads.
Sure.
But I'm not driving, a Lamborghini. So don't be, when we meet up to have, food or something, don't be surprised when I don't pull up in my Lamborghini.
Okay. I won't be surprised. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, so I think my answer would be a new vehicle. When I got my first job and within my first year, I bought a new Silverado. So I don't really regret it yet, but I'm aware that this was not the best decision.
I agree.
It wasn't the best decision, but I don't regret it quite yet. And the reason I don't regret it is because I know I'm going to drive this truck until it doesn't drive anymore. And if you view your vehicle that way, it puts a little bit different thing. If you plan on replacing it within 3 years, then yeah, buying a new vehicle was definitely a bad idea. I also feel very strongly against luxury car brands, and so because that Lexus is the same thing as your Chevy Cruze or something. Like it's literally the same vehicle. You look at a Lincoln, I don't know, or what is it called? A Lincoln SUV. That's literally the same thing as a Tahoe, y'all. It's the same thing, and it costs $10,000, $20,000 less. But people have this like, oh, I have to have a luxury brand. But yeah, I would say that's my answer to it. It is a bad vehicle. I also feel very strongly against eating out, but I also do it a whole lot. So I'm kind of conflicted there.
Yeah, well, no, and I was about to make the same joke. Do as I say, not as I do, because I really want an Audi electric car. At least at one point in my life, I think their electric cars look so cool. Yeah. I want one. I literally just said, hey, there's so many reasons not to do that. I'm not going to go out of my way and just go blow, all my savings on one. But, that's just a thing I would like, in the next 20 years is to get like a nut. But, do as we say, because we can preach saving all day, but, nobody's perfect at it. I'm sure Dave Ramsey splurges every now and then.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But, the eating out thing, like you will be amazed if you ever do a budget, how much that can actually. And, I'm no better. I eat out a lot more than I should. If you can't tell by my figure.
Another big thing is Amazon, man. And again, this is something I do all the time. But you'll be so surprised if you look at your bank statement. Oh, Amazon. Oh, man, they make it too easy. It's incredible how easy it is just to order that thing that you want. And quote unquote need. That's another thing that we should have talked about a little bit more is need versus want.
Yep.
But yeah, that Amazon, love it. Also made it at the same time.
Yes.
Let's get into the closing questions of the show.
That works.
So the first thing is I'm making my guests define words, and this will be submitted to the Webster Dictionary of Words. So. Okay. Get ready. So here we go. Your word, Seth, is going to be discipline. You have to define the word discipline. What does that mean? Yeah, oh God, he's typing.
I would define discipline as the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to. I don't like that definition. I don't like that one. No, I would define discipline as, having self-control, really. And it's harder for some people than others. And, for me, like, I'll be honest, like, sometimes it is hard for me. That's why I have to do the 2 bank accounts.
Right.
Because, I will want to go and do stuff with my friends, but I need to make sure I have my bills and my savings done. That's why I'm so adamant about I have these 2 bank accounts, and I refuse to have a debit card for, my bills account. I do have a debit card for it, but I don't take. It's not in my wallet. It is somewhere where I will not use it.
It's in the ocean. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and then the numbers are scratched out, so I really have to struggle to ever use it.
Yeah.
But it's just however much you need to do to make sure you stay disciplined and have that self-control to not spend your money.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful definition. I think there's a self-control aspect to discipline, and I think there's little hints of integrity in discipline as well. And so I like your definition. We'll submit it.
Yeah.
Not the plagiarized version, but your version. So my next question to you is taking saving money out of the conversation. What is something that Seth, as a young adult, is trying to figure out right now? What is something you're trying to grow in or figure out as a young adult?
Outside of saving money, I mean, just for me, I want to say the word independence. Mainly just, most of my friends from college do not live in the Austin area. I do have Travis, probably 20 minutes down the road.
Right.
But he doesn't text me. I'm kidding.
Dang.
I'm kidding. But the independence of, I am from Lubbock, Texas, which, if you don't know, is 6.5 hours away from here.
Yeah.
Most of my family is not in the area. And so, being independent in, I am happy living here. I do not know where I will live in 5 years. It could be it could be Austin, Dallas, Houston. It could be, DC. Like, that's a place I've always wanted to live. But, I don't know where I'm going to live. But right now I'm in that spot of learning how to be independent just on my own. Family's kind of far away. I talk to them every day. But, developing relationships with people, like friendships of people who I didn't go to school with. I was kind of spoiled in knowing a lot of people at Texas State. I got to meet some great people like Travis.
Yes, sir.
And so it's a lot different, being in the real world and navigating finding friends, especially in the COVID times. It is very hard to find places to go to meet friends. But made some great coworker friends, some friends who are no longer coworkers are really good friends now, and so I've been blessed in that way. And so it's gotten a lot easier to navigate in the last couple of months. But just figuring out, living in a city where a handful of people.
Yeah, that's really big, and you're not the first person to kind of mention making friends as a young adult. It is really hard, so we'll have to do an episode on just making friends, especially during COVID. It is really hard. I'm blessed with some coworkers that are some of my best friends, and but if you don't have that, like, where are you supposed to make friends at? That I think that's a really good question. And you and I will definitely have to go out sometime. That'll be a lot of fun.
Oh man. Woo.
So to close this out, let's talk about where can I learn if I'm a listener and I think that you are awesome or cute. Where can I find more about you? Where can I learn more about you?
I know that second one was mainly you talking to me, Travis. I appreciate that.
It was.
I mean, man, that is tough because I put on a very strong professional face for this. When most of the time, I don't think people know this, I'm actually kind of funny sometimes. I'll keep it real with everyone. Like, I can be serious. I think I did a good job here being serious, but for the most part, I don't take things too seriously.
Yeah.
So if you're wanting to get to know more about me, I mean, I do have a Twitter. I do have, Instagram. I have LinkedIn. I look professional on LinkedIn. Don't worry.
That's where you have to look professional.
Exactly. I'm not bold enough to try something new there yet. One day though, get ready. I'm gonna do something. But if you're wanting to get to know me more, just know this is the most serious you'll probably ever see me.
So what's the app? What's the handle?
Oh God, that is actually a great question. I know my Instagram handle is at real Seth McNeill because there's a lot of fake me's out there.
I believe it.
And McNeill is spelled with 2 L's. A lot of people get that confused, mainly because there is a McNeill High School in Austin with 1 L because they don't know how to spell.
Right.
And then the Twitter handle, of course, is Percaseth, Perco, Seth, and an underscore at the end. I know I'm great at puns.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Back in my Twitter days, I remember liking your tweets all the time. So if you need some humor, Seth is definitely the place to be. I don't spend much time on Twitter anymore. It's a very toxic place sometimes.
Just don't take it serious. See that I've had this conversation with some coworkers. With Facebook. I guess my kind of mindset with it is I don't use it to understand serious things,
Right.
to learn more about serious things. I try to actively avoid that area of any form of social media. Instagram I look as a way to support my friends and what they're doing. Twitter I look at a place to go and listen to some jokes and just see the crazy people that are in this world and what they think is funny. I find funny sometimes.
Yeah.
Facebook I keep in touch with family. I try to avoid the political conflicts that there are on there.
Right.
But I look at it as a good way to keep in touch with family and just, make sure, grandma's doing good in El Paso,
Yeah. Maybe that's another episode of how we should treat social media. So Seth's out here giving me all the ideas, y'all. So make sure that you go follow Seth on all the social media. Make sure you also go follow this podcast at How to Adult TW on Facebook and Instagram. With that being said, y'all, as always, we're going to learn how to adult together.